She was an island beauty with everything going for her.
She was a runner-up in Miss Bahamas competition.
She just has the look and the personality.
He was the old flame she followed to America.
He missed her, she missed him.
They reunited and picked up right where they left off.
But after 4 blissful weeks, it all goes wrong.
He dropped off at the airport to go back home.
All of a sudden, she just falls off the face of the earth.
She never got on the plane.
Family and friends are frantic to find the missing woman.
They were concerned, very concerned.
Mom flooded her phone until the voicemails backed up.
She's afraid her daughter's been kidnapped.
But the truth is far worse.
She got caught up with very evil people.
What they did really struck a nerve with me.
There's some level of jealousy, hatred, vindictiveness. It's evil.
The horror that she endured was unimaginable.
February 28, 2006. It's a quiet evening in Cocoa, Florida, a small coastal town just 45 minutes from Orlando.
Cocoa is a small town of about 16,000 people, directly west of Cocoa Beach. Pretty heavy tourist area.
It's a working class town, home to the folks who staff the attractions and hotels.
But at 12:30 a.m., residents in the Pine Acres neighborhood are about to be awakened by a violent scene.
People heard multiple gunshots and immediately calls to 911 began pouring in.
When detectives arrive, they see a man lying on the ground covered in blood.
Is that who I think it is?
They are able to quickly ID the man, who was well known to police as a drug dealer named Willie Parker.
When we arrived, Willie Parker was dead next to his vehicle in the front yard of a house.
He was on the ground with the door open, blood all over the place.
There were drugs in his vehicle. He had several prior arrests for drug sales.
However, detectives suspect the murder was more personal than a robbery or drug hit.
They didn't take his money, they didn't take his watch, they didn't take nothing. So we know it wasn't a robbery.
What detectives don't know is that what starts as an investigation into a murdered drug dealer will soon turn into a search for a missing young woman from the Bahamas, and a shocking crime that will take them 4 years to solve.
Never in a million years would detectives have predicted these 2 cases were connected.
It's one of the most bizarre twists that you can imagine.
She was loved, and she didn't deserve this. She did not deserve this situation.
22-year-old Bahamas native Doris Knowles was as dazzling as the crystal blue water and brilliant white beaches of the islands she called home.
Her beauty is kind of breathtaking. Everyone who sees her say, oh my God, who is that?
She competed in beauty pageants and was actually the runner-up in the Miss Bahamas Universe pageant in 2004.
She could do anything. She had the brains, she had the look, she had the personality, she had everything. She kind of a firecracker.
Doris had put her award-winning personality to work at the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism.
She worked for the Bahama Host Program, which trained hospitality workers in customer service skills, sort of making sure that they represented the island right.
The pseudo personality, just being smart and bubbly.
However, she had bigger dreams.
She was in college. She was very focused.
She was considering medical school.
She was really smart, so she's like the top in class. She had a bright future.
By the fall of 2004, Doris thought she'd found someone to share her future with too, in fellow islander, 27-year-old Christopher Pratt.
He was educated in the Bahamas. Their families knew each other.
Christopher was about 5 years older when he and Doris met. She was drawn to his maturity. Christopher was almost like a protector, a little bit more experienced.
However, in November of 2005, this young couple's love would be put on hold.
I want us to stay like this forever.
I know, me too, babe.
Christopher Pratt had found some financial opportunities in Florida that he couldn't pass up. So now he had to break the news to Doris that he was leaving the Bahamas for Florida.
Everyone growing up in the Bahamas looking for a way out in terms of trying to make it, you know?
He had a cousin here, and they were doing like a construction business.
I don't want you to go.
I know, but I have to.
Christopher promised that the separation would only be temporary.
Let me go over, get things going. When I get settled, you come over.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Over the next several months, the couple maintained a long-distance relationship.
They were in contact with each other while he was in the U.S., and he kept asking her to move over here to be with him.
So he offered to buy her a plane ticket to bring her to Coco so they could be together. He really missed her. He really wanted to be with her.
She missed him just as much as he missed her and agreed to come over.
On February 15th, 2006, after several months apart, Doris and Christopher were reunited, if only for a few weeks.
It was intent just to spend time with him, see if it's even going to be something that she would want to stay here long term.
Christopher and Doris picked up right where they left off, and for the next 4 weeks, their romance was as strong as ever.
Once they got back together, it was almost like no time had passed at all. That connection between Christopher and Doris was very deep.
If anything, the distance between the two of them made their passion stronger.
When the time came for Doris to return to the Bahamas, Christopher continued to try to convince her that her place was with him.
You know I want you to stay, right?
I'll come back. Maybe for good.
Doris wanted to be with him, but making the move to Florida wasn't as easy as Christopher hoped.
Doris explained she couldn't leave her family like that. She was very close with her parents, so it was a big decision.
She was a good person. She loved her mom, and she was always keeping in touch with her.
My mom spoke with her daughter frequently, like a couple times a week.
But now, on March 21st, 4 days after Doris was due to arrive back in the Bahamas, her mother can't reach her.
She's not answering her phone.
She called her daughter repeatedly.
Doris had given her mom Christopher's number in case she couldn't get a hold of her.
Come on.
Yeah, hello?
Christopher.
Hey, Miss Knowles.
Is Doris there?
Nah, what you mean?
She's not answering the phone.
Wait, she ain't call you when she landed?
No.
That's impossible. I dropped off at the airport myself.
What?
Christopher's news makes Doris's mother even more concerned than she was before.
That left her worried. This was completely unlike Doris.
They knew that something had happened.
When the Coco police get involved, all signs point to a disturbing possibility.
Her passport activity was non-existent.
She never got on a plane. At the beginning of March 2006, 22-year-old Doris Knowles was having the time of her life in Florida.
She'd come over from the Bahamas in February to rekindle things with her old flame, Christopher Pratt.
He cared for her, he loved her, he wanted her to move to Florida to be with him.
But by March 21st, it's been 4 days since Doris has had contact with her family, and her mother is worried sick.
Doris was known to keep in touch with her family, her mom in particular. Every day she would call her.
And when Doris's mom reaches out to Christopher, he says that he dropped her off at the airport.
Yo, she ain't call you when she landed?
No. He thought she had gone home to see her family.
In a panic, Doris's mom contacts her daughter's friends in the Bahamas to see if anyone has spoken to or seen Doris.
Pick up the phone.
She also contacts police in Doris's last known location, Coco, Florida.
I'd like to file a missing persons report.
Mrs. Knowles is transferred to a detective with the Cocoa Police Department.
Caravano, Cocoa Police.
I spoke with Mrs. Knowles. She said that it was unusual for her not to, call and say, hey, Mom, I'm okay. So that raised flags with us also at that point.
My boyfriend took her to the airport.
Yes. She was supposed to be home days ago. I haven't heard from her.
You have the hope that something hasn't happened and she's just somewhere else. But I think they knew in the back of her mind something has happened.
It's not like her to disappear like this.
Okay, ma'am, we're gonna do all we can to help find your daughter. I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
After talking to Doris's mom, the Cocoa Police begin their investigation.
We was reaching out with Customs, the airport police, to try to find out if she did cross back.
So when we checked with Customs Immigration, there's no passport activity.
Which means Doris never got on the plane.
So now detectives start to wonder if she made it to the airport at all.
Detectives decide it's time they talk to Christopher Pratt.
He was staying at one of the local motels here in Cocoa.
Christopher Pratt? Yeah.
We need to ask you a few questions about Doris Knowles.
Did y'all find her?
He seemed genuinely concerned about Doris and wanted to know if she was okay.
He was forthcoming and wanted to cooperate with us.
However, Christopher has no new information for detectives.
Christopher Pratt told us that he took her to the airport to fly her back to the Bahamas and has not seen her since.
Did you make sure she got on the plane?
No, man, I just dropped her off.
Can you think of anywhere else she might have gone?
No.
At this point in the investigation, detectives have little reason to doubt Christopher's story.
He cared for her enough to ask her to move from the Bahamas to leave her family and to move over here to be with him.
It's all my fault, man.
Why do you say that?
Because I should have never asked her to come.
He's very quiet, soft-spoken. He doesn't seem like the person that would be aggressive.
We'll let you know if we hear anything.
When detectives return to the station and run Christopher's name through their database, the results appear to confirm their first impression of Doris's boyfriend.
She didn't have a criminal background at all.
No speeding tickets, nothing.
But when the detectives run Doris's name, something does pop up.
There was a disturbance at a bar downtown in Cocoa, and one of our officers had responded.
She was given a citation.
It's a trespass warning, dated March 15th, 2 days before Doris's family lost contact with her.
Detectives figure that that can't be a coincidence.
So we looked into that call, who the officer was that handled the call.
The officer's name is Thomas Shaw, and detectives waste no time bringing him in to talk.
You want to see me?
Yeah, come in, have a seat. Doris Knowles, you wrote up for trespassing a few days ago.
Yeah, I remember her.
According to Shaw, it was a routine incident.
She's this gorgeous girl. Guys are hovering, buying her drinks.
She had a little bit too much to drink. It was getting a little loud.
The bartender ended up asking her to leave.
An argument ensues and things get out of hand.
Once police were called, Officer Shaw responded to the scene.
He states that he gave her a trespass warning and asked her to leave.
Did she comply?
Yeah, I mean, she did it without any trouble. And that's it. Not exactly.
What the officer tells them next adds a new twist to Doris's disappearance.
He did meet with Doris Knowles off duty, and then he hooks up with her. They have a sexual encounter.
Detectives start to wonder if Christopher knew about this.
Could this be a case of jealousy or a hookup gone terribly wrong?
There's some level of jealousy, hatred, vindictiveness. He's watching his girlfriend with another man.
Cocoa detectives investigating the disappearance of Doris Knowles have just discovered that the 22-year-old Bahamian had an encounter with police 2 days before she disappeared.
In fact, Doris partied so hard that the bartender didn't only cut her off, he also ended up calling the cops.
Cocoa patrolman Thomas Shaw was the responding officer.
He talked with her and they calmed the situation down there. He put her in his patrol car.
Though Shaw admits, things then took a somewhat unprofessional turn.
The officer began talking to Doris, and of course, she was a very beautiful girl. Gorgeous.
According to Officer Shaw, that was his last call for the night. So after driving Doris to the motel where she stayed with Christopher Pratt, they talked for hours and then exchanged phone numbers.
We pressed that issue a little bit more, and Officer Shaw said that he gave his number to her to contact him if she was interested in meeting, having dinner, hanging out.
And the following evening, the off-duty officer picked up Doris for a date, not knowing she was involved with Christopher Pratt.
All of a sudden, detectives learned that Doris and Christopher may have been on the outs.
Shaw says that when he picked up Doris, a man followed her out of the motel room and talked to her in the parking lot.
Shaw says he doesn't know who the guy was, but his description matches Christopher Pratt.
According to Shaw, it looked like they were having an argument.
What was that about?
Nothing.
All right, where to?
How about your place?
That's cool.
Shaw says Doris ended up spending the night.
He hooks up with her. They have a sexual encounter.
They want to know exactly what his relationship was with her. They ask all sorts of questions.
You never saw her again.
I tried calling her, but she never answered my call or called me back.
Officer Shaw insisted that it was a one-time thing.
Like, y'all ought to be out there talking to the guy that she was staying with.
Her boyfriend.
If you want to call it that. She told me they haven't been getting along.
Detectives begin to suspect that Christopher Pratt had kept this information from them.
They were currently dating and still living together, and she's now with another man. I would definitely speculate that there's some level of jealousy.
And if Christopher knew that she spent the night with this man, could that have sent his jealousy to the next level?
Detectives need to have another talk with Christopher. But when they return to the motel, they discover that he's checked out of his room.
They'd been cleaned and turned over.
Detectives put out a bolo for Christopher Pratt and continue to search for Doris.
We're just waiting to see what other type of leads we can get.
Weeks pass with no new leads. But on April 12, 2006, Cocoa detectives get a call from South Carolina State Police.
Really?
The trooper informs Cocoa detectives about 3 arrests he'd made the night before.
Can I see your license registration, please?
A South Carolina state trooper was acting on a tip about drugs coming through the state.
There were 3 men in the car. 27-year-old Batiste Kirkman, the driver, 31-year-old David Willis, and 27-year-old Christopher Pratt.
Where y'all headed to?
New York. See some friends.
New York, huh?
Yeah.
Made y'all step out of the vehicle.
Police had a tip about this particular vehicle transporting drugs.
It didn't take long for the tip to pay off.
When they searched their car, they found drugs, and they found a firearm.
They collect the firearm and send it off to be tested.
Police took the 3 men into custody, unaware of the Florida bolo for Christopher regarding Doris's disappearance. But David Willis claims to have information that would blow the case wide open.
David Willis starts swearing up and down that he didn't have any involvement with him. He didn't know the stuff was in the car with them.
I was just driving the car.
Them being in this vehicle in South Carolina, they were going to charge them federally.
He was telling the authorities there in South Carolina that he needs to talk to the police back in Cocoa.
David Willis says to the officers, "Let me tell you what I know."
He says that he has some information about a murder.
Hurry up, let's go.
April 12, 2006. It's been more than 3 weeks since 22-year-old Doris Knowles disappeared in Cocoa, Florida. But detectives working the case are about to make an unexpected breakthrough.
Caravano, Cocoa Police.
I got a call that there were 3 Cocoa boys arrested in South Carolina.
They're 27-year-old Batiste Kirkman, 31-year-old David Willis, and 27-year-old Christopher Pratt. Doris's boyfriend.
Batiste, Christopher, and David were actually traveling to New York when they were stopped in South Carolina.
They were going to New York to flip some drugs. They had cocaine, marijuana, an abundance of it on them.
While detectives are surprised to learn Christopher is involved in a drug deal, it's the intel offered by David Willis that catches their attention.
Once he was arrested, David Willis tells deputies in South Carolina he has information about a murder.
At that time, we drove South Carolina.
In South Carolina, detectives find Willis eager to talk.
The drug charges and the firearm charges, he could have been looking at 10, 15 years, and he was trying to mitigate that.
But when detectives sit down with David Willis, they are surprised about whose murder he wants to discuss.
They thought this would be a big revelation about what happened to Doris, but it's not.
Guy named Willie Parker.
Detectives know exactly who David Willis is talking about.
It's a drug dealer. He was shot and killed in Cocoa.
The murder had occurred on February 28, 2006, 3 weeks before Doris's disappearance.
Okay, what can you tell us about the Parker murder?
Batiste killed him.
Batiste Kirkman was well known to police.
According to Willis, Batiste had a vendetta against Parker for moving in on his girlfriend.
Batiste killed him.
Yeah. And you looked him in the eyes, no conscience, it's crazy.
He said he was psychopathic. He would just kill people. Everybody feared Batiste.
Willis claims that on that night in February, Batiste staked out Willie Parker's home, waiting for him to come out.
Willie Parker was standing outside. They drove up. Kirkman got out, shot him multiple times.
Hey, yo, Willie!
Willis claims Batiste was the shooter. But another man was driving.
The getaway driver in the shooting of Willie Parker was Christopher Pratt.
Go, man, let's go, man. Hurry up, man.
But how does Christopher's involvement in Willie Parker's murder connect to Doris's disappearance?
Was Doris Knowles caught up in any of this?
Doris?
Pratt's girlfriend.
Yeah, I know who she is.
Where is she?
She's dead.
What Willis tells them next is beyond belief.
What happened to Doris Knowles?
I don't know, but I know they buried her.
How do you know that?
I took Batiste to get the shovel.
Willis tells detectives that Batiste called him for a ride on the afternoon of March 17th.
Yo, Batiste!
That is the same day that Doris is supposed to fly home to the Bahamas.
I need you to give us a ride. All right.
Willis says he knew better than to ask Batiste Kirkman too many questions.
And dude is crazy. Chris and Doris was acting real strange, so I knew something was up.
How were they acting?
Scared.
Next, Willis says he drove to a nearby home improvement store where Batiste went inside, leaving him to wait with Doris and Christopher in the car.
He says that Batiste bought a shovel, duct tape, and several bags of ready-mix concrete.
David said after their trip to the store, Batiste dropped him back home and asked to borrow his car.
After that day, he never saw Doris again.
And he killed that girl.
Any idea why?
Nah. But I heard Batiste talking about where they left her.
He was claiming that she was buried somewhere near the power lines on State Road 524 in Cocoa.
After talking to Willis, detectives bring Batiste Kirkman into the interrogation room.
He had been suspect in several violent crimes.
Batiste was very used to being interrogated by detectives, and they could tell.
As we sat down with him, he was very curious. He asked questions, which is not unusual for a suspect in a crime. They want to know where you stand and what do you have.
Word on the street says you killed Willie Parker.
Never. Not Willie. Willie was a good friend of mine.
He wouldn't give us any information.
Getting nowhere on the Parker murder, detectives turned their focus to Doris.
Yeah, I hear Doris Knowles a good friend of yours too, isn't she?
You can say that. It's Chris's girl.
When's the last time you saw her?
Been a couple weeks. Last I heard, she was in the Bahamas.
He says that she went back home. He was pretty calm and cool about it.
I hope nothing happened to her.
Detectives have just learned the fate of 22-year-old Doris Knowles from a man named David Willis.
David Willis was claiming that she was dead and that Autiste Kirkman and Christopher Pratt buried her.
After Vatisse Kirkman's coy interview goes nowhere, detectives turn their focus to Doris's boyfriend, Christopher Pratt.
Looks like you've gotten yourself in some pretty serious trouble.
We beat around the bush a little bit. We told him, maybe if you have any information that'll help you.
What can you tell us about Willie Parker?
I heard he got shot, that's all.
We tried to soften him up a little bit, but he wasn't buying it.
Detectives try to catch Christopher off guard when they change the subject to Doris's disappearance.
What you doing up here in South Carolina? Your girl's been missing for over a few weeks down in Florida.
Look, I took her to the airport, all right? Look, man, when a guy like Vatisse asks you to go on a ride to New York, you don't say no.
Christopher says she was supposed to be going to the Bahamas. That's all I know.
The conversation was very, very frustrating.
Christopher refuses to reveal what happened to Doris, but the trip to South Carolina does give detectives plenty to go on.
So they have all of these claims from David Willis about these two being involved in Doris's disappearance.
Once back in Florida, detectives begin building a case against Christopher Pratt and Vatisse Kirkman in the murder of Willie Parker and the disappearance of Doris Knowles.
We didn't have a lot of good evidence in the Doris Knowles case yet, so we were still trying to piece that together.
After contacting authorities in the Bahamas, they discover that Christopher Pratt's record isn't as clean as they thought.
He did have a history in the Bahamas that was mainly in drug sales.
Detectives know Christopher was involved in both the Parker murder and Doris's disappearance, but can't shake the feeling that it wasn't his plan.
You could tell, though, he was just like going along with Kirkman.
Next, detectives follow up at the home improvement store, where Vatisse supposedly purchased a shovel, duct tape, and concrete.
We knew the date that happened, so we just went through thousands of receipts and finally found the receipt that only had concrete, a shovel, and duct tape.
The purchaser paid cash, so the receipt alone wasn't enough to confirm David Willis's story.
However, a timestamp on the receipt and the store's security footage provide detectives with the proof they need.
We watched Vatisse check out at the counter, and we watched him push the cart out of the door with concrete, a shovel, and duct tape.
So Willie's story checks out, but they still don't know why they would kill Doris and what, if anything, that has to do with Willie Parker.
Police had thought maybe there was a jealousy angle when Doris hooked up with a cop. But now it seems like something totally different.
With Willis, Kirkman, and Christopher Pratt in custody in South Carolina on drug and weapons charges, detectives focus their efforts on finding Doris's body.
David Willis told us that Autiste Kirkman and Christopher Pratt buried her on State Road 524, so we literally got everybody we could and went out there.
We had a front-end loader, we had the ground-penetrating radar, we had the cadaver dog out there.
We dug multiple different locations. We dug hole after hole after hole. We didn't find anything, we didn't see anything.
With frustration mounting, detectives question whether or not David Willis was being truthful about the location of Doris's body.
She could be anywhere.
Without a body, Detectives know it'll be hard to convict the men of murder, but they decide it's time to tell Doris's family what they've learned.
That's not a conversation we want to have over the telephone. We did emphasize that we think we know what's happened. We would like you to come over.
Doris's mother and father fly to Florida to meet with the detectives in Cocoa.
They're there with us. We're kind of outlining what we know, that we do believe that they killed her.
The mom was very shocked about Chris's involvement in it. I assured them that we were going to do what we can to try to find their daughter.
Doris's mother offers to assist detectives.
She requests to talk to Christopher Pratt, who's still being held on drug and gun charges from the traffic stop.
Detectives work with the prosecutors to set up a meeting in South Carolina.
She pled for him to give her any information he could to let her know what happened to her child.
Chris sticks to his story, saying the last time he saw Doris was when he dropped her off at the airport.
Just tell me where she is, so we can bring her home.
Wish I could help you, but I can't.
Please.
He denied everything, but he cried. It was starting to get to him now.
However, once detectives receive the ballistics report on the gun seized in the traffic stop, they finally have the evidence they need to charge the men with at least one murder.
It was the firearm that was used in the murder of Willie Parker.
In October 2006, Vatisse Kirkman and Christopher Pratt are charged with first-degree murder in the death of Willie Parker and are extradited to Florida.
David Willis identified Kirkman as a shooter and Christopher Pratt as the getaway driver.
Yo, man, let's go, man. Hurry up, man.
It takes 4 years, but Vatisse Kirkman finally goes on trial first in July 2010.
Vatisse Kirkman was found guilty and was sentenced to life in prison.
With Vatisse Kirkman convicted of one murder, Christopher Pratt sees the writing on the wall.
If he goes to trial, he could be found guilty and he's going to get life in prison.
It's a risk Christopher isn't willing to take, so he has his attorney reach out to the prosecutors.
Christopher is looking to a plea deal.
The prosecutors are willing, but only if Christopher helps them first.
He would also testify in the Doris Knowles case, and we would have to locate her body.
When you're young and you're in love, you tend to put the blinders on. You don't see things quite as clearly, and you just press on with what you want to do. This is a 22-year-old who was in college, a 22-year-old who had a mother who was concerned about her, who had a father who was concerned, who got into a bad situation, who thought she loved someone, who thought she could trust this man for whatever reason. So it was not just about finding a body, it's about finding a person who was killed.
Four years after she vanished from Cocoa, Florida, detectives believe they're on the verge of learning what happened to 22-year-old Doris Knowles. Prosecutors have offered Doris's boyfriend, Christopher Pratt, a plea deal to avoid a life sentence for the murder of Willie Parker.
He'll only make the plea deal if he tells them the truth about Doris's disappearance.
In August of 2010, Christopher takes the deal.
Me and a couple of prosecutors interviewed him at the courthouse.
We're here really just to talk about Doris Knowles.
Christopher tells detectives it all started when he saw Doris leaving with Officer Shaw.
Shortly before Doris had disappeared, she had hooked up with a Cocoa police officer.
So you see her talking with a police officer, and what happened as a result of that?
Christopher explains that Doris did have a wild side. He couldn't control her, so he didn't try, even though it bothered him.
However, according to Christopher, it wasn't jealousy that drove what happened next.
Instead, he says it was Vatisse Kirkman.
Where your girl at now?
She on a date with some cop.
You sure he's a cop?
Yeah, he been in the neighborhood all the time.
She can tell him about Willie.
Christopher claims he never told Doris anything about the Parker murder or about Batiste. But just seeing Doris talk to a police officer was enough for Batiste.
Now, she got to go.
Batiste told him that we have to get rid of Doris because she was friends with the cop.
Christopher says he tried to talk Batiste out of it, but says he had no choice. It was either Doris or both of them.
They already know what Kirkman capable of.
Christopher says that when Shaw dropped Doris off at their motel the next day, he already had her suitcase packed and waiting.
He told her that his friends were picking them up and they would take her to the airport.
Chris, what's going on?
It's gonna be okay.
Christopher Pratt said that she trusted him, and he took advantage of that.
Instead of the airport, David Willis drove them all to the home improvement store where Batiste was caught on surveillance.
And I'm dumbfounded by that. You're just gonna sit there and look at the girlfriend knowing what you're about to go do?
Batiste comes back out, puts the shovel, duct tape, and the bags of concrete in the trunk, and then they head back out to David Willis's house.
Chris, I'm scared.
Once they dropped off David at home, under the cover of darkness, Christopher says that Batiste demanded he tape Doris's hands and feet together.
Tape her hands.
No! Chris, no! Chris, please, no! Why? Chris, please, please don't open me!
Then Batiste drove the car to the outskirts of town.
They stop along a wooded area off of 524 in Cocoa.
Dig.
Once again, Christopher says he'd had no choice.
That's when he put him in the car.
Christopher says he dug a hole deep enough to hold a body.
What now, man?
Go get her put in a hole.
Then, Christopher says he took Doris from the back of the car and carried her to the hole.
Then they got water from a nearby pond to mix with the cement.
And I said, did Batiste Kirkman kill her before putting her in the hole?
She gonna be alive.
I said, well, how do you know she was still alive? And he said, she was looking at me. I can't even imagine the amount of fear in her mind.
Chris says that he covered her face first so he wouldn't have to see her.
After telling his story, Christopher takes detectives out to where they buried Doris.
Gotta be somewhere in this area. I think we'll perimeter for 10, 15 feet around here. Somewhere around here.
He didn't act very emotional. It was, I think it's somewhere in here. And that was it. We took him back to jail.
"4 years after their initial search, police finally locate the body of Doris Knowles.
We finally recovered her.
Her remains are sent to her family in the Bahamas. And authorities are finally able to charge Batiste Kirkman and Christopher Pratt with Doris's murder.
Once again, Christopher Pratt cut a plea deal with prosecutors.
When Batiste Kirkman goes on trial in April of 2016, Christopher Pratt is the star witness against him.
On the stand, Christopher basically repeats the detailed account of the murder that he gave to police.
In the end, the jurors see Batiste Kirkman as a cold-blooded killer.
The jury found him guilty of capital first-degree murder.
Thanks to his plea deals, Christopher Pratt will eventually be released.
10 years on the Willie Parker case and 10 years in prison on the Doris Knowles case combined to give him 20 years. And then he would be deported to the Bahamas.
Please, no! To the investigators who worked the case for over 4 years, it's too little for what Christopher Pratt did to Doris Knowles.
My personal belief is that he just wanted to be seen as a victim, and I was just here because Bautiste Kirkman made me be here. But I think in reality, he was upset because she cheated on him, and he knew exactly what he was doing.
For Doris's family and friends, the outcome does little to ease the pain of their loss.
She was a beautiful, fiery woman, and it would have been amazing to see what she would have accomplished if she hadn't been involved with Christopher Pratt.
She trusted this man, and she ended up dead. That's the ultimate tragedy in this whole thing. The betrayal, the loss of a good person.
It doesn't make sense. It's not humane. It's not normal. It's definitely not love. It's evil.
The girl. Cassandra was the IT girl. She was a cheerleader. She got a magnetism about her, only bright. She was really looking forward to completing her education and going on with a career. Cassandra's vibrant, popular image and clear aspirations underscored the immense potential that was extinguished. A life full of promise brutally cut short. Adventure movie. And then they decided to stop by some kind of college party going on there. Friends confirmed Keith and Sandra partied at the University Square apartments April 10th. They left around 2 a.m., then disappeared. And then Cassandra had to be home at a certain time. Cushion Tombi, they said. And that's the last time anybody saw. The mundane details of their last evening, their innocent plans, stood in stark contrast to their horrific fate, making their disappearance all the more chilling. The Parkway was not a place that you went like that and just left your car there. Keith was more responsible than that. The other murders had already happened. Keith wouldn't have went there. Often Matinabi, who'd understanding hastily. Character and awareness of the prevailing dangers strongly suggested foul play, dispelling any notion of accidental abandonment. It always haunted me, and it haunts me to this day, that we did not find Keith and Cassandra's remains. This persistent anguish, the inability to provide a final resting place, was a deeply personal burden for Danny Plott and other investigators, an open wound of unresolved grief. We have to find the murder, and some bitch did this. Warning and anger. The raw echo, the deep desire for accountability. They finally decided. All right, let's go back and start over. With foundational assumptions, to entire investigation. Poktur kometiculister. In tifalti de sedishen. Poktur fifroms in pantry. Hulbali intended. Spoke to the profoundly difficult challenge. Difficulty dist. And the sheer magnitude of the challenge. Oni Yotun. We had come to a couple of conclusions. The intensive period of concentrated investigation began to yield broader strategic insights, moving beyond individual case specifics. Often be. The wallets out, we decided who we were looking for was a person of authority. This pivotal conclusion, based on the consistency of the killer ant's control and victims' likely compliance, dramatically shifted the investigative lens. Imagine it's nighttime here, with somebody you thinking about anything. Farnaby, and then suddenly they're sniffing. Often knock on your window, and a man with a flashlight says, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here." Booting it in. Did the person of authority theory, exploiting the natural deference to uniformed personnel. What if this killer poses as a policeman? in the process of somebody getting out their ID. He pulls a gun, so he now has control. Could that be? Of course it could. Initial traumatized. The plausibility, yet effective tactic, was chilling. During this era, you could buy an old cop car, complete with a side light, ETCETEERA, for $300 at a police auction, and duplicate being a cop. Detail highlighted the ease with which such a deception could be orchestrated. As credibility, we decided to hold a press conference, and it exploded. The public announcement, a calculated risk, generated massive media attention on stressing in again. Listen, traumatized. It reached the point where even in the newspaper articles that there were being people pulled over, that it was really a policeman. The widespread dissemination of this warning demonstrated the immediate and significant impact of the theory on public safety and awareness. With it could have made a good story. While fostering caution, the coverage sometimes bordered on sensationalism, yet it undoubtedly served to heighten vigilance. Nothing about this seems to work, and then you begin to convince yourself that nothing will ever work. Or traumatized. The deepening despair and sense of futility, as new strategies failed to yield results, began to weigh heavily on the investigators. Law enforcement are running out of room at the morgue. This is one serious guy. He is not going to stop. Rentless, Bigwenshin Nabin, Siti Fentley, the chilling thought of the traumatized, added an unbearable pressure, an urgent demand for resolution. Osennold for years. They become more difficult. The passage of time inexorably eroded leads, dulled memories, and scattered witnesses, compounding the inherent complexities of the investigation. Colonial Parkway murders have slowed down. Nothing ma'u-shehat has been happening. No news, no new events. Bin's quiet that follows. A cold case. Often Greece becomes its most frustrating characteristic, a silent testament to the killer. An anonymous tipster calls the task force and says an individual has been harassing couples in the Lover's Lane pull-offs on the Colonial Parkway, Traumatai. They called him Peeping. Oh, Tom, really? Now that is interesting. This anonymous tip, seemingly innocuous, yet tied directly to the heart of the killer's hunting grounds, provided a much-needed jolt to the stagnated investigation. Who might you be, Mr. Peeping Tom? And what are you doing on the parkway? Abuvs. The seemingly minor infraction of peeping often masks deeper, more disturbing behaviors, sometimes serving as an entry point for escalation into more violent crimes. Or thematize. Through we get a tip that a man in a blue truck is stopping and looking in parked cars on the parkway. They get a tag. The tag reads EMRAW. Eat them raw. What do you eat raw? Oysters. That truck comes back to a waterman named Alan Wilmer, Winpeat. The cryptic, yet geographically relevant Lespet license plate. And the connection to the Watermaden theories was an explosive convergence of clues, transforming a Peeping Tom into a potentially viable serial killer suspect. Only that they can look at. This could be him. This could be the Colonial Parkway killer. And they need to act fast. The shift from abstract theory to a concrete individual brought a surge of renewed hope and intense urgency, galvanizing the weary investigative team. Often Pakandies. The FBI and the Virginia State Police now have Vekep Hatate. Appears to be a viable suspect. The collaborative effort between federal and state agencies often fraught with jurisdictional complexities, now channeled all its resources towards a single, compelling individual. On the recent rating, the efterfund, B, was surveilled where they find him cleaning his truck. They noticed Wilmer was out spray peeling the back of his vehicle, and that he was bleaching the interior of the vehicle. Now, why would he do that? Is he concealing evidence? White on white. These highly suspicious activities immediately amplified the urgencies, suggesting an attempt to remove incriminating traces, fitting the profile of someone with something to hide. Maybe this is our guy. They immediately go to get a search warrant. Kulbe Yekuti Muni illicit. Nicholas Tigilaklit provides comatically cleaning provided crucial probable cause for obtaining the necessary legal authority to conduct a thorough search or traumatize. Return to Wilmer S. Place. They present him with the warrant. He is cooperative. He steps aside and they search the premise. Agent and cooperations of the suspect, seemingly innocuous while seemingly often raise psychological flags, as true sociopaths can maintain outward composure even under extreme pressure. They do the search warrant of his truck, reveal a whole lot. But the search of his house debit Gauss several things. The absence of immediate forensic evidence in the truck, while disappointing, was offset by discoveries within his home. They find an enormous supply of pornography. They find guns. They find guns on Peryushny métier. They find pairs of handcuffs and other bondage devices. I'm not saying that makes you someone that kills people, but you put everything together. This is not your average guy. Bolinian tens. To. While not direct evidence of murder, certainly painted a disturbing picture of Wilmer's private life, aligning with certain aspects of a sexually deviant or controlling personality, hinting at dark predilections that transcended normal behavior. Person of profound interest and concern. A shadowy figure whose inner world was deeply unsettling. Onaby, they continue to talk to him. He denies any knowledge of any of this. Denies everything. The consistent denials, despite the mounting circumstantial evidence, indicated a steadfast refusal to cooperate or confess, a characteristic of individuals committed to deception. Also Mubi and arrest. They have no evidence that the crucial lack of forensic or testimonial evidence meant that despite deep suspicions, an arrest remained legally untenable. They decide that they will have an FBI polygraphist take a shot at this guy. Uncontroversial, the polygraph as an investigative tool was employed as an investigative tool, a means of gauging deception in the absence of hard proof. Mr. Wilmer was to interviewed on the parkway and approaching a vehicle or two, which was very useful information. But his story changed a little bit. Admission fent kintist, though partially conceded, coupled with inconsistencies, kept him firmly in the investigative spotlight. He said, "Yeah, Mott was on a Colonial Parkway, but Mott wasn't in that particular pull-off. I was in another one. Mott walk around out there, and Mott look for places to fish." Onway incited. Dia Sinbi, bin listen be. And there isn't anything wrong with that. His alibi, or rather, his alternative explanation for his presence, while technically innocent on the surface, was immediately met with skepticism, a carefully crafted deflection designed to appear legitimate. So he takes the polygraph, and the polygraphist says he did do this. He is innocent. The results of the polygraph, a moment of profound significance, dealt a devastating blow to the case, seemingly exculpating the strongest suspect, Wine, Hoiti, Domocles.
Well, you better be right.
This internal pressure and reliance on a polygraph result, despite lingering doubts, underscored the limited options and the desperate need for definitive answers in the absence of other evidence. The FBI decided that impasse physical evidence was enough to say he is not the one. The polygraph, at that time, acted as a significant gatekeeper, preventing further intense investigation of Wilmer in the context of the murders. He looks good, constantly, and traumatized. And so does the test scores. This pivotal moment represented a profound missed opportunity, a critical turn in the long, tortuous path of the investigation, allowing the true killer to slip through their fingers, remaining a shadow in the night. Onbini, traumatized. The frustration, the agonizing thought of how close they were, would haunt many for decades. Ain't I and state police, if one of us got a lead. You know, we'd let the other one know. The collaboration was active, the communication channels open, but the leads simply weren't there. But the leads, they just weren't there. And, you know, a family member, they weren't shy, and more don't blame them, often traumatized. And they sometimes weren't shy in the media. The victims' families, driven a desperate need for answers, often took to the media, their voices, a constant, urgent demand for justice. My son and daughter, sister, brother, brutally murdered. What are you doing? Quaint, you didn't hear nothing about it. And then Joyce would consistently pick up the phone and call them off and ask them about the case. And all that, Finchley, all, commise of sees by Og Joyce. Cor became a powerful and essential, albeit agonizing, force, preventing the cases from fading into obscurity. Onatanabe. It just kind of went dead, the silence that fell over the investigation, the lack of new developments, left families feeling abandoned and frustrated, and Mott didn't handle it very good at all. Conifanfully fine. Aussie. And even to this day, ever happened so. It is like somebody walks out the door and they refine, and they just don't come back, and you don't have answers. Or unfiltered grief expressed highlighted the profound, lasting trauma of unresolved disappearance and murder. Come on the body. The anxiety was terrible at that time. I mean, it is just not knowing what happened to him. It just nothing but anxiety. It just doesn't go away, you know. Iniquitude I, US. You have to become your own advocate, because no one else will do it for you. This powerful declaration empowerment in the face of institutional silence, the fight for continued attention and resources, we read the ones now kind of trying to advance this case, omitting a 10. Who killed my younger sister and her girlfriend? All of these other families, mine included, deserve answers. All our answer was, we redoing everything we can. It had been years, nothing, with unwavering determination, reflected the long, arduous journey of grief and advocacy. Om Tusulite, Aperban Weekend. Labor Day weekend, a 19-state trooper is investigating an abandoned vehicle in a rest area that S left running with the keys and the ignition. And when he ran the tag, of course, D-I-N-G, 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 D-I-N-G. This is a car of a missing person. Bwander, Tentlin. The distinct sound of the bell signaled the chilling return of the pattern. The car comes back to 21-year-old Daniel Lauer, reported missing, with 18-year-old Anna Maria Phelps. The Colonial Parkway killer is back, and maybe this time he has left the waterfront. Luis had been Tronaby, Bannen, the immediate, terrifying realization that the predator had resurfaced was chilling. The added dimension of being inland presented a new, perplexing element to his modus operandi. Can I suspicious that this is the Colonial Parkway killer? But what is different? The Long I-64, their car was found at a westbound rest stop. They call it the New Camp Rest Area. This rest area is many miles from the Colonial Parkway, Almatais. This is inland, not the waterfront. This geographical shift marked a significant deviation, challenging the prevailing waterman theory and forcing investigators to reconsider their understanding of the killer's operational range and preferred hunting grounds. Almat. So Mott went up there and Mott found the car, a gold CHE, a Barnaby, Novave, Kep, Aitehat, Black Primer. He see her, this car, clothes in the back seat, keys in the ignition, car running. It is no question, it is deja vu. We re-dealing with the same guy, Omkanim Suit, the Greek overwhelmed the new location of this patient who can listen. Solidified the conviction that the same killer was responsible, his grim signature unmistakable. Inbis. His Anna Maria Phelps was a ten-beast. Was an 18-year-old young lady from had recently dropped out of school. School wasn't tea for her. She wanted to work. She wanted to get ahead in life. She wanted to be on her own. And she had a boyfriend named Clinton Lauer, other victim. Daniel Lauer was her boyfriend's brother. Anna Maria's drive for independence and her family connection to Daniel established the context of their joint journey. Daniel, he was a horse lover. He liked riding. He was 6 foot tall. He was a dominating force, all in titting. If he handles horses, he wasn't a weakling either. Daniel was doing very well. His father had painting business, and he worked there. His father had gotten him a CHEV, Nova. In many respects, he was on the right path for independence himself. His emerging independence and his close familial ties further deepened the tragedy of his loss, and Daniel had decided he wanted to kind of get out on his own, and the plan was for Anna Maria Phelps and Daniel Lauer to drive to Virginia Beach, Inshead Omatais, 64 years old. Their innocent plans for a trip to Virginia Beach became their fatal destination. We learned from the families that they never arrived in Virginia Beach. Onpi, hing intending on. The tenthly, the confirmation Octa arrival cemented the dire suspicion that they too had fallen victim to the relentless predator, Kuntmadei. If they are in fact missing not in this car, then where are they? Could the Colonial Parkway killer have abducted and killed them? What has happened to them? And the search begins, onto Machais, Ewenyun, highlighting the chilling predictability of the pattern and the frantic urgency of the subsequent search. There was a search by special agents of the Virginia State Police and troopers of the Virginia State Police in the general area, Onaby, in traumatized. No Anna Maria and Daniel. No Anna Maria Slike, very frustrating. And off, Mott can only imagine what it's like for the family. The extensive search spanning a vast area initially yielded no results, leading to renewed frustration for investigators and agonizing despair for the families, or Finchais. And if there anything at all that you can do to help, we appreciate it. The family's public plea, a desperate cry for assistance, underscored the depth of their suffering and their hope for resolution. After 6 weeks later, on October 21st, 2 turkey hunters find something shocking. The incidental discovery by unsuspecting hunters often unearths the most horrifying truths in cold cases, a grim twist of fate. Mot get a call, at area. Mot met. There was a logging road. That was the best way to describe it, and there was a deputy stationed there. And Mott stopped. He said, "Go up here. You didn't walk very far up the fork of the road, and then you went into the woods, or skeletonized a Kent. Head up. Skeletonized Kent's head up. They find 2 skulls and bones. These are 2 young people that, unfortunately, the best way to describe it nicely is they melted into the ground," we sing in Osted. "They were so badly decomposed at the time, that it was very difficult to determine exactly what happened. This harrowing description of the decomposed remains were provide a brutality of their fate, yet provided little immediate answers about the exact sequence of events. All in my hand. Mott would have been 33, maybe. Quans. Tanaby. Ilisnaby. Danny Flott Drekby. Personal presence at the recovery scene. Illustrated directly in the grim task. Illustrated his hands-on dedication to every aspect of the investigation, further embedding these tragedies into his professional memory. Untlisbit. Barnaby. Osebain Tenpi, as you can. One man's wearing a raincoat. The bottom photo is Anna Maria Slocket, that was found at the fork of the road. We speculate that maybe was where she was killed. And that locket came off, onpak, this small yet deeply personal artifact provided a poignant link to Anna Maria, suggesting a violent struggle at Moff that very spot. When the general area was searched, there was very little to find. No bullets, no knife, no anything. Body the Gurok Dunad. Further complicated the reconstruction of the crime and the identification of the perpetrator. An autopsy confirmed the body of Anna Marie Phelps. Another body is believed to be Dan Lauer, of the victims, while providing a degree of painful closure for the families. Only deepened the mystery of their demise. Other Offino Eisley. The Skennaby, all were taken. With the forensic anthropologist, Dr. Doug Alsley. Autopsies of skeletons yield little other than sex and age, and any wounds to the bone structure. The expertise of forensic anthropology was vital in gleaning whatever limited information remained from the highly decomposed bodies. When he examined the skeletal remains, Dr. Osley found vekep hat ate. He deemed a knife wound on Anna Maria S. left hand. Humend, essenting in liskis. What? Cut your throat. You hold your hands up, and it was a diagonal knife wound on her 3rd finger. That S the only trauma that he could say, on a testament to Anna Maria. Final. Desperate struggle provided a crucial clue to the violent nature of her death, suggesting a struggle against a knife attack, a horrific echo of the earlier murders. Osis the Colonial. Parkway Killer. Well, of course it is. There's a change here and there in the M.O. But so what? Either way, they work. Wait 'em. The overwhelming similarities in the pattern of abduction, the targeting of couples. The targeting of couples and the subsequent disappearance solidified the conviction that it was indeed the same predator, despite minor adaptations in his methods. Undinovur. The couple's disappearance is strikingly similar to others, including Robin Edwards and David Nobling. The only difference is that they were found in the woods instead of in the river. This specific change in disposal location became a critical, albeit perplexing, deviation. Owning intently, he still outraumatized. There is 2 of them. They be probably very vulnerable. He strangles, cuts the throat of Rebecca and Kathleen. He shoots David and Robin. He disposes of the bodies, however it was done, of Keith and Cassandra, and then lays the other two side by side. Why West Ice? This grim catalogue of the Killer City, varied yet consistent, methods revealed, a terror of his versatility and adaptation, demonstrating his relentless intent regardless of the specific technique. There are a couple things that are different, but there are some things that are not. Chemical consistency lay in the targeting and elimination of couples, even as the specific means of death and disposal varied. Traumatize. 2 on the parkway, 2 within easy driving distance of the parkway. His method up to now has been the sea and the water. Now his method is a concealment in the deep woods. What? What does that mean? Did he become fearful of the increased patrol activity on the parkway? Probably. Want to stop Ukain. He just wants to stop the police from getting close to him. Ozentil taste. This insightful analysis by plot. The attributing Laku to a tactical Mmoku to a tactical adaptation in response to heightened police presence offered a chilling glimpse into the killer's cunning and self-preservation instincts. The change wasn't a cessation of violence, but a calculated evasion. It is. This individual has eluded law enforcement for years. If he says shifting his MO, and he says committing other murders, we may not even recognize them as his. Omabana we continued, Arostli, apophonically, the still Poltromaten, whose terrifying adaptable killer, whose changing methods could obscure his continued atrocities, heightened the sense of desperation and futility. Bentinus, a killer, that is what he does. The stark simplicity of this statement conveyed the chilling reality of a truly depraved individual whose inherent nature was violence. The question always becomes, has he done other crimes? Of course he has. That is what is kind of scary, Onyotia. How many did he kill? We have no clue. The acknowledgement of unlinked, undiscovered victims was a haunting realization, suggesting an even wider trail of devastation, hidden from plain sight, waiting to be connected. There have been 8 dead, we knew about. There are others dead that we don't even know about. The pervasive uncertainty deepened the collective anguish, recognizing that the scope of the killer, as terror, might extend far beyond the known cases. And the case continues to be cold despite their focus on it for years. After the task force, Mott worked several years in the future unit as a special agent, which took me away from it, Quant, and it was given to somebody else. But I worked in and around the same office, and Mott did not have the least bit problem saying, "Hey, anything new was dragged out? Anything new? The Parkway murders? No. Go away." Really, offensive dagger. Then Dekdois, who had traumatized. This point Danny Plaw's tested career, showing his persistent, almost obsessive, checking on the case even after officially moving on, underscored the deep personal connection and the gnawing feeling of unresolved duty, a lifelong burden, a ghost haunting his professional conscience, constantly prompting the unspoken question. Will we ever know? When, obviously. Despite all the effort, investigative work, the years began to tick by, and no justice has been found for the family. The inexorable march of time, bringing no answers, transformed the initial grief into a prolonged, agonizing despair for the families. Unially. Non-ties. My mom and my dad, no likelies. My mom and my dad, and Mott took it with a grain of salt. Mott had zeroed expectation about finding out who killed my brother after the 10th year, the 20th year, The 30th year, horrendous waiting game. The whole time, just a cold waiting game. It's all it's been. This heartbreaking account from David Noblin's family member perfectly articulated the slow, grinding counting erosion of hope that accompanies a prolonged cold case, without uncertainty, but the waiting game was endurance of unending grief and uncertainty. Bossen, but it est. What do you do? None of us were brought up in law enforcement. None of us had any background on what to do if your brother is abducted or murdered. Oni inducest. The raw helplessness felt by the families, without any roadmap, underscored their profound vulnerability and their desperate need for professional support and resolution. We've got 8 victims, 16 moms and dads. We've lost 9 of them so far. Kindeuneditius, Deans Fentley, passed away. It's been 37 years. Mott can't really say it gets easier to talk about. All of these victims have been dead much longer than they were alive. Onaby hetimaseli. Finchley atheist. This gut-wrenching realest time on earth was now shorter than the period of their absence, provided a profoundly tragic measure of time as passage, also of traumatized, he simply, nochumi, often wait, added another layer of sorrow to the enduring quest for justice. Tired, but this, et, inlet, ipi, alphan. But indelible mark left by such profound evil lingered not just with families, but with those who had tirelessly pursued the truth. It has been very hard on Danny, when Kuntai, 13. But those murders have never been far from mind, and, being still, remember the frustration of, why can't we find this person? It est the worst feeling in the world. You feel like a failure. You feel like you haven't done your job. You know better, Matabi. It just wasn't enough. And you beat yourself up for that. Danny Plott's raw emotional honesty spoke to the immense psychological toll of unresolved cases, the heavy burden of duty unfulfilled, even when faced with insurmountable obstacles. Offered one ties, blessedly unverwise, was a common wound carried by dedicated investigators, one traumatized. Law enforcement response to a NINONE1 complaint about a foul odor emanating from a private residence. The mundane, unpleasant nature of a routine call once again masked a discovery that would unlock decades of agonizing mystery, of albeit traumatized. They find a badly is a bed full of soup. The vivid, albeit grotesque, description conveyed the advanced state of decomposition, indicating a death that had gone unnoticed for a considerable period. The decay was horrible, Otomider. They'd be Inslee, if they re-dealing with a natural death, a suicide or a murder. The initial uncertainty was standard for such a scene, requiring careful forensic examination to ascertain the cause. Again, it reveals advanced arteriosclerosis and blocked arteries. In other words, his heart got blocked up and it stopped. And so did he. The medical examiner's report provided a clear clinical cause of death. Natural causes, conditioning, tensibly, for the purpose of using, and the possibility of using it to identify the individual. Gwensald, Ofur, Tentley, Brace, Sedwarties. The routine, a standard procedure for unidentified or ambiguous deaths, was an act of profound, unwitting serendipity, laying the groundwork for a breakthrough no one could have predicted. This was someone who was directly under the diagnosis, the Dinantinemus, the entire time. Only see, alist, Milis Lislang, that the killer Iron Eyes, Iron, but unapprehended and undetected, only to be identified posthumously through a quirk of fate, would reverberate deeply through the investigative community. Altijd, aftet. Was when we got the first substantial break in the Colonial Parkway murders. The passage of nearly 6 years since the initial, seemingly unrelated death indicated the slow, deliberate pace of DNA processing and database matching. 1.y traumatized. A detective is going through the daily crime sheets, notices this death case, looks at the name, and recognizes it. It was from years ago. Mott was called, and the person said, "The name, Alan Wilmer, meaning anything to you?" And I said, "Yeah, Parkway murder. System. Und lebid mostized." This almost casual, yet utterly profound, reconnection to a forgotten suspect was the genesis of the breakthrough. The detective's sharp memory and attention to detail were instrumental. This was the guy who was identified by an anonymous person as a peeping Tom on the Colonial Parkway. Of him, they let him go because it could prove anything. The ghost of past frustrations, the polygraph that had cleared him, the lack of evidence, all came flooding back, laden now with the unbearable weight of hindsight, off in a connection to the Colonial Parkway. Suddenly, which means a connection potentially to all the Colonial Parkway murders, which means you start looking for where do we have DNA that we might be able to compare onto Sintuis. Investigatively linking Wilmer's DNA to the archived samples from the cold cases began in earnest, a furious race against time. Ocean. Samuel had been sodomized. Robin Edwards had been sodomized. And, to the credit, seen is to maintain some of the samples of that DNA for ages. Of forensic evidence from decades earlier. A testament to the dedication of crime lab personnel, proved to be the pivotal, miraculous factor. Alan is deceased, but now we have a DNA sample from him, onatized. They compare that sample taken from the victim to the sample taken of Alan Wilmer Sr., and it is a 100% match. Well, my, went with exclamation. Shock, vindicate surge of emotion. Crick, with profound frustration, relief, and profound frustration, all commingling in a single moment of absolute clarity. Sably. After decades of work and effort and theorizing, they finally have a name all these years later. Alan Wilmer Sr., Heist, is the Colonial Parkway killer. The declaration of his identity, delayed by nearly 4 decades, brought a thunderous, albeit posthumous, reckoning to a community that had long yearned for justice. Olving abientais. Best way to put what Mott was ecstatic, you know. Mott was also humbled and a little bit irritated at myself, that Mott knew that Alan Wilmer was a great suspect. He still, Danny plot traumatized. Raw, honest admission of simultaneous shock and self-reproach captured the complex emotions of vindication mixed with the lingering pain of a missed opportunity, almost electric jolt, confirming his deepest suspicions, yet shadowed by the painful knowledge of the decades lost. But who is this guy? Who is Alan Wilmer Sr.? What was Alan Wilmer besides a murder and piece of shit, all matitize? Stripped of formality and expressed the visceral contempt and revulsion felt towards the revealed perpetrator. He was a waterman. He was a commercial fisherman specifically who farmed clams and oysters. Gwendenden. He spent a majority of his time on his boat, a vessel he named Denny Wade. From a geographic perspective, the anchor point is York River, and that is where he worked every day. Insane confirmation of the Ottoman theory provided a stunning validation of the investigative intuition, placing the killer squarely within the environmental context long hypothesized. It makes complete sense that it was a waterman all along. It holds simplicity of the truth, once revealed, often holds a captivating clarity. In Clonabee, Fentley, Unisitaste. Also, Wilmer was an avid hunter. He belonged to a hunt club not far from the murder victims were discovered skeletonized. When you look at Phelps Lower, their bodies were found on a private hunting reserve. Is there a connection? We don't know. Fire. The convergence of Wilmer, personal interests, a Ficken, a waterman and a hunter, with the varied disposal locations of the victims, now cast a new, sinister light on his adaptable methods, suggesting a killer who intimately exploited his local knowledge. Traumatized. Everything about Alan Wilmer's life fits the entire style of the Colonial Parkway killer. He moves by boat. He heads around at night where you can see the lovers lands from the water. Everything about him seems to come together once he's identified and firmly linked scientifically to one victim. Binley snapping into place to infuse the Tulaboric traumatize. The profound satisfaction of all the puzzle once the central identity was known offered a cathartic release for the investigators, turning fragmented theories into a coherent, horrifying truth from a end. And they let us know that they had a DNA match. Moot was shocked. Moot was absolutely shocked. Moot got a call from our case agent, and they were bringing up Alan Wade Wilmer. It was just like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. We went CKIN. Heartache and pain. Wondering what the FFUCFCK happened to my brother, you know. And come to find out, they had the right guy the whole FRICKIN time. Obon Cosley exploded with the revelation that the perpetrator had been within their grasp all, only to slip away due to the limitations of forensic science and investigative tools of the time. Traumatized. When you talk about anger, there has been like 35 years worth of anger. It's maddening. There he was in the very beginning. Mott met still angry about it to this day. Mott thought it was outrageous. They told my family they were looking at watermen. But this is that guy. On it, est. Often late. Searing frustrated. Of a lost opportunity. Of a path left untraveled. Resonated deeply with the victim's family, transforming their long-held grief into a potent, justifiable rage. Nicely. It always makes me wonder, could law enforcement have prevented the things that followed? The deaths, the loss of life, the painful questions of prevention, of what ifs and could haves, were an inescapable part of the belated discovery. Osipor Dovlet. I decided that Impai, he is not the one. The decision was made. That was made by me. This nuanced statement from Danny Plott acknowledges the institutional nature of the decision while subtly expressing his own profound disagreement. We let him go, but we did do enough. The burden of this regret reflect the agonizing thought of actions not taken, reflected the profound ethical and complexities of criminal investigation, where seemingly small decisions can have monumental, devastating consequences. Anything else to try to get into it, admit to it. But Mott, don't think he was the kind of person that would. This determination to push harder, even beyond conventional boundaries, suggested the depth of Plott's intuitive conviction about Wilmer. A polygraph, but so what? He also happens to be a sociopath, so he doesn't react. Thus, a polygraph is useless. he's not capable of emotion, all be insight into the psychological profile of a sociopath, provided a powerful, albeit painful, explanation for the polygraph's failure to detect deception, one traumatized. Sociopaths lack the typical responses that polygraphs are designed to measure, making them uniquely adept at circumventing such tests. Someone like Wilmer Mott killed 2 people today. Big deal. That's what makes him so dangerous. Untraumatized. The chilling absence of remorse, the utter indifference to human life, was the defining characteristic of Wilmer's malevolent nature, cementing his classification as a ruthless, unfeeling predator, a true creature of darkness. Often be stigmatized, fit one ties with. When there are 4 double murders that everyone says are connected, one possible answer is no evidence contained any perpetrator DNA. Robin and David's murder, that is the only one of the 4 that there was actual known DNA evidence. Con every predly crucial biological case. Crucial biological evidence proved to be the decisive factor, a testament to serendipity in the face of widespread evidence absence, or been labeled kubrit. The answer code of often unpredictable nature of forensic breakthroughs, relying on the availability and preservation of minute, invisible traces. So, what is known about the 4 Colonial Parkway double homicides? At the very beginning, the FBI behavioral profilers said, Waterman, on Contui. The initial I profilers now shown with the clarity of hindsight, a remarkable testament to the power of early psychological assessments. Traumatized. The first 3, 86, 80 Sinedaby, 88. All of them took place right against the water, either the York River or the James River. You're dealing with a creature from the Black Lagoon. The evocative, almost mythical comparison captured the elusive, menacing nature of the killer, whose domain was the water's edge and the shrouded darkness. We spot Kathy and Rebecca, and lovers land together in a car, approaches them, he strangles them, and he slashes their throats. Onkanabi. Athy, Soot, ND-A, soaked it in diesel fuel, tried to burn it. Then he shoved it over the embankment, assuming it would sink in the river and disappear. His attempt at disposal is a disaster. Unishin Prutikol. Barnaby. First, amateurish attempt at disposal highlighted his initial missteps and his profound misjudgment of the elements. The diesel, his tool, betrayed his ignorance, failing to ignite. Often a BB. He sodomizes Robin Edwards, and he shoots her in the back of the head. David is shot in the shoulder, and they re-thrown in the river, assuming they lung float away, but they wind up trapped under the embankment. Gwesen traumatized. However, D.N.A. this time remains behind, which ultimately becomes his undoing. The tragic failure of his disposal attempt, the bodies becoming snagged, provided the critical forensic link, the one biological thread that would, decades later, unwind his entire reign of terror. It would be the most degrading act of the second murder, provided the single, most definitive piece of evidence. Gondif and Cassandra traumatized. By Keith, he had perfected his craft. If this was his 3rd murder, he abducted and killed them, threw them in the water. He went out and he fished, clammed, oystered from that boat. How hard would it have been to take them out on that boat and dispose of their bodies? It would have been very easy. On a bit. Tentley, Mahais. This explained the complete disappearance of Keith and Cassandra, suggesting Wilmer learned from his previous failures. expertly using his intimate knowledge of the waterways. And his vessel, Disley's, the Denny Gaze, and his vessel, the Denny Wade, to ensure the absolute dispersal of the remains. A horrifying efficiency. Cool, traumatized, became his ultimate tool of concealment, enabling him to vanish bodies without a trace. Why quenished? The fourth, of murder, Daniel Lauer and Anna Maria. From the parkway, they are discovered. Miles' speculation is they stopped at the eastbound rest area of New Kent. That S, where Wilmer took control of them, and then they were carried to these two positions where they were found. Remains. He learns from his said. He gets better at disposing of remains. Wing Barfenaby on Now and Sire. The shift from water-based patrol concealment, driven by increased patrol activity on the parkway, underscored Wilmer's adaptability and cunning, transforming his killing ground in response to perceived threats, utilizing his secondary domain as a hunter, Kusi, Altroy, Aklikin. His evolution as a killer, from clumsy attempts at arson and river disposal to meticulous scattering and inland burial, reflected a grim progression, each mistake sharpening his horrifying craft. Binase. But what is his deal about couples? Does he hate them? What motive could there be? Maybe just a willingness to kill. And perhaps that's the only motive he needs. The persistent question of motive, ultimately unanswerable by a living perpetrator, remained a dark void. Close to Eber wondered. For some individuals, life itself becomes the twisted reward, a demonstration of ultimate power and control, needing no further complex psychological justification. Now we've learned that Wilmer's sphere was even larger, untraumatized. We now have way against these other cases. Here we have Alan Wilmer. We have him tied to the murder of Robin and David. Luckily, we got DNA from that. But that wasn't the only crime his DNA hit on. Kent read and attentively. There was a 29-year-old woman named Teresa Howell who left the nightclub and disappeared. She was found naked, strangled, and raped. Situation eventually. Silkway, Nassau perpetrator, DNA, in senior. This chilling revelation profoundly expanded Wilmer's criminal profile, proving his propensity for violence against solitary individuals, as well as couples, and confirming the sexual assault motive in other contexts. Identified terror, other, Barney. Another unsolved merchant, widening his sphere and suggesting a far broader, more diverse pattern of victims, shattered by his monstrous acts. Tent. We now know that he killed Matthijs. What will that were alone, so the net gets cast pretty wide to look at cases that this guy may have been involved with. Well, it is always difficult to say what will happen now. Will the DNA science advance further from some of the cases? To link him directly to the crime, it's entirely possible. The enduring power of scientific advancement, continually evolving, offered a glimmer of hope that further connections could be made even after the killer's death. Execution will never occur. You can prosecute a dead guy, but not hope he is facing some kind of judgment. Well, you would hope so. Perhaps he moved to a higher court. We own. Agreed we against. We're traumatized. This poignant, almost spiritual hope for a higher form of accountability spoke to the fundamental human desire for justice, even when earthly mechanisms are no longer possible. On the community. If we had had hindsight in law enforcement, FBI, state police, all the White County Sheriff's office, this would have been handled different. But the only answers we can really for sure give is to Miss Howell's family, the Noblin family, and the Edwards family, Komani Ninjmai. Cannabid tent light, scroll clarity, highlighted the limitations of even the most dedicated investigative work without the benefit of future knowledge. Quati Drophetis was. Definitive answers were available for some, but not all, of Wilmer's known victims, a disparity that added to the anguish. The FBI and the Virginia State Police, they have not stopped. And Mott hope they can tie him to any and all of them. A measure of answers. This enduring commitment, even posthumously, offered a measure of solace and hope that further linkages would bring full, complete understanding to all who suffered. Wrote my mother. In one night she lost her only daughter, her youngest child, and her best friend. The profound cascading grief described, the profounder scored the utter devastation inflicted by Wilmer's senseless violence, echoing across multiple lives and generations, all traumatized. This is a solvable case. All it takes is time and resources. This hopeful declaration, made in the light of the breakthrough, offered a testament to the power of perseverance and the steady, quiet march of dedicated efforts. Owned by Tinkruniapris. White. A younger brother, Keith, was just starting out his life. He had aspirations. He was a good kid. Mott hated that he didn't have the opportunity to grow up and to have a family. I mean, Dad got robbed, Keith. He robbed him of a whole entire life. Traumatized. That was my big brother, man, you know. Does to get any tighter than that? I mean, it's not fair. Mod we missed so much for them. So much. Mod ka no ve kep. My life would have been so much different if he was still in it. God, mod ve kepiet hat, he was still here. Onnet, Dornaby. Emotional outpouring of grief and longing from the families, decades later, underscored the immeasurable void left by these brutal, senseless murders, all trauma chat. And the enduring love for the lost permeated every word, a powerful testament to their unbroken bonds, all traumatize. Some people never have to done in their life. They do at the crook like everybody does. Mot luklunk, be quite frank with you. Mot hope there is a special place in HEL for this man. And every day, what he did to those kids is done to him for eternity. Why, little Biff justice. The visceral desire for retribution, for an eternal accounting, reflected the profound and justifiable anger of those who had suffered unimaginable loss, commensurate with the unspeakable cruelty inflicted. There is supposed to be justice and punishment. Always the case, the belief, herongings, moral belies, where wrongings, righted, are righted and evil is confronted, remained a persistent, driving force. Traumatized. S notes. However, he died in his hovel of a trailer and turned into a puddle of DNA. No one cared about Alan. Maybe Alan didn't either. He cared about killing, and he got pretty good at it. On agreed. He still bite, Otis, this Starkend. Dying unmourned and unacknowledged, only to be identified through the very biological traces he unwittingly left behind, painted a grim picture of a life consumed by malevolence. On violent, who had been a bee, ultimately, tis a quiet, Townasail, came downfall. Came, not through a heroic capture, but through the silent, patient advancements of science and the anonymous, humble conditions of his own demise, a stark and fitting end for a man who cared only about the destruction he wrought. We Finchley again. So what kind of things were these voices saying to you? There are people in this world who are patently evil. My mind went to that. Someone took her. Someone was trafficking her. Do you think you didn't commit the jury that you don't have nothing to do with that. Could listen. Like Motto V got to solve this case. A lot of murderers are emotional when they take a life. Not him. He says cold as ice. How much worse will it be if we don't get who did this? And Mot met. What? What? What do you mean? They've been murdered. We read not just the police. We read the murder police. But the cap and Abel, did he send a uniform to take the report? No, he sent a FUC, KING detective, honestly said. These internal monologues and these cries from Jokenda echoed the relentless pursuit of justice, the profound conviction that evil must be confronted, and the unwavering dedication of those who walk the darkest paths in service of the truth. We haze, they can quite commutate to intently, who provide answers to bring light into the shadows and to remind all that the triumph of good over evil, however delayed, is a fundamental, enduring human imperative. A labyrinthine puzzle of the ultimate mystery, a labyrinth of human depravity and enduring sorrow that casts a long, chilling shadow across the landscape and the very fabric of society. Where were they killed? By whom and with what motive? Were they killed deliberately or by chance? On Bon Fomer, questioning in light. These are the silent pleas fondly. They are still mere academic inquiries that plague the living, echoing the silent pleas of the dead for recognition and understanding. Ontlui, iwaitak figais, wai tu wily. As of now, for far too long, leaving an open wound in the collective consciousness, a raw and festering doubt that eroded peace and instilled pervasive fear, Gondor and Jin. Nearly 40 years ago, in a quiet corner of the Commonwealth, the Colonial Parkway became a symbol of terror for a generation of Virginia. One treating agree. This ribbon of scenic asphalt, once a conduit for leisurely drives and blossoming romances, was transformed into a pathway of dread, a grim monument to inexplicable violence that defied conventional understanding and scarred the hearts of countless individuals. Oniferepumi. Trompelat, the picturesque scenery, Takli, with its historic trees and meandering waterways, seemed to mock the horrific events it silently bore witness to, forever altering its innocent perception. 8 young people, vibrant and full of life, all may have died at the hand of the same killer, when Elisipini trits. Prit, why? The sheer scale of this potential serial violence sent a shiver through every community touched by the disappearances, realizing that this was not a series of isolated tragedies, but a connected web of malevolence spun by a single, unseen thread. Is a largest, oldit, under, honestly said. A grim distinction that placed an immense burden upon law enforcement and an indelible mark upon the history of the state. Quieted. Banabid. The Colonial Parkway murders were not merely statistics. They were an unfolding saga of shattered lives, grieving families, and an relentless, agonizing quest for truth. That followed, the initial atrocities only amplified the sense of haunting injustice, turning an already terrifying reality into a pervasive, living nightmare that refused to be forgotten, constantly demanding a reckoning. Omaid. Oh my God. There's somebody that is targeting these kids. These desperate, incredulous times must have been uttered countless times by worried parents, terrified friends, and confounded investigators. The realization, slowly dawning, that their tranquil communities harbored an unseen monster, often bite-eyes. A predator, the very serenity and seclusion of the Colonial Parkway to his advantage, transforming havens of intimacy into deadly traps. Listen to the killer selection criteria became apparent. Vulnerability exploited, innocence betrayed, and trust weaponized. At notorious lovers' lanes, typically cherished for their privacy and romantic allure, but which, under the cold calculating gaze of this individual, became staging grounds for unspeakable acts. Untight. Metal sentinels, pattern witness silent, metal sentinels, bearing witness to unimaginable horrors. Vekepite had each successive discovery, marking the relentless progression of the killer's insatiable hunger. Bentonloy, wise, traumatized. He was selecting targets, seemingly at random, yet was selecting targets, seemingly with a chilling precision, choosing individuals and circumstances that offered him optimal control and minimal risk. Documentalist. The unsuspecting victims, seeking a moment of intimacy or solitude in these secluded spots, became tragically easy prey. The cars contained victims' clothing, wallets, and keys with no signs of struggle, an absence that only deepened the mystery and heightened the terror. Kushinkore said, "Dibaming ikortai, deception," suggested either a swift, overwhelming attack or a disarming deception that allowed the killer to gain control without overt confrontation, rendering the victims helpless before they even realized the true danger. Onbi and Bad, offered. The chilling finales, uniform and absolute, leaving no survivors to tell their tale, sealing the lips of those who could shed light on his depravity, and cementing the pervasive fear throughout the community, which traumatized. Each abandoned vehicle became a silent scream, a testament to the lives abruptly extinguished and to the absolute control wielded by a ruthless, unfeeling hand. It's as horrible. This single word, stark in its simplicity, captured the collective anguish and revulsion felt by everyone touched by these unfolding tragedies, from the families whose lives were irrevocably shattered to the dedicated yet deeply frustrated investigators who had been listened later. A whisper of hope, a fragile beacon of light emerged from the long shadows of despair. Now we're able to say, after all of those years, that perpetrator has finally been identified. On emotional be, often be. Strike. These words delivered the profoundal sense of gravitas, and an overwhelming sense of gravitas spoke of volumes about the enduring power of investigative perseverance, the unyielding hope of families, and the patient, incremental march of forensic science across time, in a glimpse of hard-won truth. It was a declaration by Tanabe. White, delayed was ultimately triumphant, offering a glimpse of hard-won truth after generations of agonizing uncertainty. Serial killers always have a pause between their events, but it's time moving on to hunger return, Offrey in Dicid Blit. This deep psychological, of-casing insight into criminal behavior revealed the insidious cyclical pattern of et ugehat predators. Periods of dormancy, deceptive stretches of quiet, followed by an inevitable, irresistible craving for violence. A dark engine driven by an internal, insatiable malevolence. Denistko honorable defaultumer. It was merely a temporary reprieve, a gathering of destructive energy before the next devastating act, a terrifying testament to their inherent nature. Wait again. Because, OD, it was good the first time, when traumatized. This chilling internal monologue, imagined by those who studied the killer's patterns, offered a glimpse into the predator's twisted psyche, ultimate. A verse, pure satisfaction sufficiently derived from inflicting death and a extinguishing life, and a disturbing policen in his own invincibility, unfeliz. who not only committed unspeakable acts, but derived a grim, self-reinforcing pleasure from them, viewing each murder as a personal triumph, an affirmation of his dark capabilities. He still lacked motivation. Steeped and a narcissistic sense of omnipotence made him incredibly dangerous. A testament to a life dedicated to bringing resolution and accountability to the darkest corners of human behavior. But Met, not the only one who answered the call, a humble acknowledgement of the communal effort required to confront such profound evil, particularly and chillingly cold as the Colonial Parkway in Cation. The pursuit of justice of cases as complex as the Colonial Parkway murders demanded not just individual brilliance but an unparalleled dedication from a collective of brave and tenacious individuals, barely stat, to tirelessly sift through the detritus of time, to re-examine faded evidence with fresh eyes, and to chase spectral clues across the unforgiving expanse of decades. This required not immense intellectual rigor but an almost spiritual tenacity, an unwavering commitment to the forgotten victims, unbelieved, assetly. To catch a ruthless killer, one must possess not just intellect, training, and courage, but also an unshakable belief that even the most cunning and remorseless individuals can eventually be brought to light. To find justice for the dead became more than a professional obligation. It transformed into a deeply personal quest, fueled by a profound understanding of the immense, lingering pain inflicted upon surviving families, a silent promise to those whose voices had been brutally silenced, honorably, adveritably effaced. That Americans, a testament to the silent, tireless, and often thankless work of those who stand on the thin line between order and chaos, refusing to yield to the pervasive darkness, also when decency and accountability against the forces of oblivion. One who is traumatized. 5:30 in the evening, as the warm hues of an autumn day began to surrender to the encroaching twilight, 2 park policemen respond to a 911 call reporting an accident on the Colonial Parkway. Italy, traumatized. Seneby. The mundane, almost routine nature of the call, a seemingly innocuous incident on a quiet, scenic route, starkly belied the profound horror that was about to unfold before their eyes. A grim revelation that would irrevocably alter the course of their careers and the tranquility of their community. Oniline Tumadumiten. The typical rhythm of a weekday winding down was abruptly shattered by an urgent summons to an incident that promised only minor disruption, not unimaginable tragedy. Quantigmatized. Grossly fierce, more traumatized. They are flagged down by an individual whose frantic gestures and distressed demeanor immediately hint at something far more serious than a simple fender bender. Only discreet. The person, etched into their movements and expression, served as an initial, unsettling prelude to the darkness awaiting them. Audition, Eistembeitli, Tromibide, Eiten Tromihor said. The flashing lights of their patrol vehicle, cutting through the deepening shadows, leading them down a narrow winding path to an embankment above the majestic York River, which gracefully flows through the heart of the park. Omseltit. Edge, usually so peaceful and serene, at this hour instead became a path toward an unsettling discovery, a journey into the heart of an escalating dread. Pomatayan. As the azes, the precipice, their gazes, an incongruous and disturbing sight. They see a 1980 white HONDA sedan, nose first in the river, Omiat, Inchitienfleet. Bententica visually impact of the car, partially and awkwardly angled in the tranquil water, sent an immediate, cold shiver of unease through the responding officers. Otley said. The vehicle appeared abandoned, strangely out of place, an unsettling metallic intrusion on the natural landscape. At immediately signaling that this was no ordinary roadside occurrence. Commissioner to Abendley, Dynabidi, in Crew Tronaby, Bornaby to say immediately work their way down the treacherous embankment. They due down the treacherous embankment, grappling with the slippery terrain and the encroaching gloom, driven by a desperate hope to see if there's someone trapped in his car, still clinging to life due to life. Aid of a first responder to preserve life and offer aid, to propel them forward, utterly unaware that they were not about to rescue the living, but to uncover a tableau of unimaginable horror. Unbeklis. Was they found their worst expectations, a scene etched into their memories with chilling clarity. They find two women in a car with a ghost-like appearance, and their throats have been deeply slashed. On Shinobi head. The words are stark, horrific, painting an immediate and visceral picture of grotesque violence that defied any prior experience. The initial thought of an accidental misfortune evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, undeniable, and deeply unsettling truth. This is not an accident, only altaist. It is a homicide. The immediate, profound shock as gut-wrenching realization that true evil had chosen this once tranquil place as its arena, conisining and quiet. Often senti. The ghost-like appearance of the women likely referred to the gospeler of death, the silent stillness that accompanies a life brutally extinguished, their youthful vitality cruelly drained away, replaced by an ethereal, almost spectral quality that defied comprehension. Oikon, Hunan, Disby, consciences, Howie, traumatized, the deep, savage slashes across their throats spoke not merely of death, but of a ferocious, intensely personal suffering and leave an indelible mark on both the victims and, tragically, on the consciences of the officers who discovered them. Onby. The Sinen, Donatline, Afama Torabi, Traumatsai. Incompatibly, Tormatsain. Immediately elevating misfortune and immediately elevating incident to the gravest possible category of criminal inquiry, a chilling and unforgettable introduction to a terror that would plague the region and the memories of these officers for decades to come. Otley. My name is Danny Plot. These were the words of a man deeply intertwined with the tragedy, grounding the unfolding narrative in the lived experience and enduring commitment of a dedicated law enforcement officer. Asian Tamikusta. During the colonial Parkway Gay murder investigations, Asian sets, Mott was a special agent with the Virginia State Police. Bruce, Benbiet. Through Henobi Benjen Fron, Wanpi, Opros, Johnny, Wantley. Setting the stage for a retrospective jaunting unsolved cases and revealing Plot as a central figure whose professional life would become inextricably linked to these horrors. When she in a town, although do we lies, he stood in quiet, both literally and figuratively, on the very ground where the terror began, carrying the weight of years of unanswered questions. Ono bitin, when Naidende Todi on VC maybe. Back when the Colonial Parkway was similar, but it was as well maintained. It was just a physical observation, but an atmospheric one, informing the perception of vulnerability that defined the era of the crimes. Omanamdi said. It is a beautiful scenic drive, he acknowledged, appreciating its natural allure, even as he recounted its dark history. But in the late 80s, when these murders occurred, it was a pretty dark and spooky place. The atmospheric detail was vital. It transformed the modern, manicured image of the parkway into a vision of its former, more isolated self. The dense, untamed foliage, the lack of nearby structures or human intervention. All these elements conspired to create a natural arena where malevolence could flourish unchecked. Anthony Clue quite traumatized. It became a clandestine for unspeakable acts, allowing a predator to operate under the concealing cloak of night, using the very wilderness for his wicked designs, shrouded by the pervasive silence and the deep, consuming shadows. Omitum, the serenity, once an invitation, became a threat, turning beauty into a landscape of terror. Qualifies, imbaning, kusisanapide, a descriptor that resonated with respect and familiar wisdom, an unvarnished and straightforward approach to law enforcement forged through countless years of confronting difficult cases. Only where Holy was. Tronowist, he was not merely a bureaucrat, he was a man of the field, tempered by experience. Danny has suffered the slings and arrows like me, of the press and the public and the two-bit politicians, and so on and so on. Brains albined, promoted. This shared implied me, underscored the unique challenges and relentless scrutiny faced by detectives working high-profile murder cases. Public demands answers, the media clamors for sensation, and politicians seek advantage, all of which add immense, often unfair, pressure to already agonizing investigations. This bond, forged in the crucible of shared adversity, explains the ensuing camaraderie. So it was a natural thing that he and Mott became friends. In traumatability or had to date. One being, such friendships for those who grapple daily with the darkest aspects of humanity, providing a mutual understanding and unwavering support that transcends typical professional relationships, a condition of kindred spirits, walking parallel paths in the demanding world of justice. Whitleyd. Hey man, how are you? The casual familiar greeting between two seasoned professionals, a bond of mutual respect forged over shared experiences, and a deep understanding of each other's worlds. The same, still walking around, und humor, and understated resilient, traumatized. Felixley was steeped in the gallow resilience common among those who spend their lives confronting mortality, often it been size. A quiet acknowledgement of the enduring grind of their profession, yet also a powerful affirmation of their unwavering spirit. Lucent, still fighting the good fight, still dedicated to their calling, despite the emotional and psychological toll that their careers had inevitably taken, Otide, and distantly Tatley. Danny first called me because he liked my show. The initiation of their professional interest underscored the importance of media platforms in bringing law enforcement tied communities together. Mott watched an episode of Homicide Hunter, and Joe S. show was wonderful. Agree. And then there'd be the my Mott was impressed. Any tent. Distill did belays, that admiration, Fungber. At distinctives for Joe Kenda distinctive stistil, I-style, and his successful career highlighted the appreciation peers often have for those who articulate their shared experience impact. Wisinningaby, my, representing a moment of reflection, often signaling a crucial turning point in a case or a profound observation about human nature. And he let me know that and asked me what it was like to live in Colorado Springs. And Mott informed him. Mott had moved. Inquiries about life and location began to shrink. And he said, Mott live in Suffolk, Virginia. No. The blunt, surprised exclamation reflected the unexpected discovery of geographical proximity, turning a casual professional connection into a potential in-person friendship. untenting a bited. The sheer unexpected commonality was too compelling to ignore. He asked if we could meet for lunch. Mott said yes. Ona being in Tilat. Husabi, Izekin Tuasvichain. Came a profound intellectual partnership, bridging geographic distance and professional timelines, setting the stage for a deep dive into the labyrinthine details of the Colonial Parkway murders, of profound insights. Talk with Joe is an experience in itself. Plot, ace, high regard for kinsights and encyclopedic knowledge of criminal psychology underscored the unique value of their collaboration. Ocomedy, his eyes. This generous praise from a peer, particularly one with Plot's own extensive background, was a powerful testament to Kenda's reputation and expertise. Gomeling, tightly, Trauman of the case. Sharing decades of frustration, fragmented insights, and persistent questions. I talked to him for hours about the Colonial Parkway murders, reliving the agony and the tireless efforts of years past. Bomentire. Heard about 2,200 miles away in Colorado. They meant nothing to me at the time, because they were outside my jurisdiction, Python B. But now they interested me. The shift in Kenda's perspective, from distant awareness to engaged interest, reflected the compelling nature of unsolved mysteries, particularly when illuminated by the raw, first-hand perspective of an investigator whose life had been